Imagine for a moment our great outdoor landscapes in Colorado and across our country, the mountains, our rivers, the air, our plains. And now I want you to think about Walmart, and I want you to think about a 100-acre organic farm. Now I want you to answer the question, which, Walmart or the 100-acre organic farm, is having a more positive impact on our nation's physical environment? Who would say the farm? Get them up there. Okay. Who would say Walmart? Okay, a fewer number. Let me tell you a few things about Walmart. I was working with Procter & Gamble, P&G, in the early 1980s when Walmart really started to become a factor on our national retail scene. Does anybody here remember when boxes of detergent used to be about this big? And now they're about this big. Walmart did that. They demanded that we at P&G and every other detergent manufacturer take all the inert ingredients out of our detergent boxes. Old detergent boxes were packed full of inert ingredients because we wanted them to look bigger on a grocery shelf.
That mic just went out on. There we go, sorry. Sorry, John.
No problem.
Mic went out. There you go, sir.
At that time in our nation's history, the focus on our natural environment was not what it is today. And Walmart's drive to get the inert ingredients out of detergents had everything to do with their drive for efficiency and driving lower costs for its customers. But the result was an inadvertent but important change in how detergents were packaged. The energy cost for delivering detergents to market was significantly reduced. Since that time, Walmart has become much more involved in actively supporting important environmental initiatives. Here are some examples. They removed over 35 million metric tons of greenhouse gases from our atmosphere between 2010 and 2015. They engaged dozens of their suppliers in an effort focused on soil health, in which they have moved 76 million acres of land to more sustainable agricultural processes. Walmart now set a target of removing 1 gigaton of emissions by 2030. Over 130 suppliers had their arms twisted by Walmart to help reach this goal. 26% of the electricity used in Walmart stores and in Walmart are being supplied by renewables. My family and I live in one of the more environmentally friendly and energy efficient homes in this valley, and we don't come close to 26% of our electricity being supplied by renewables. Walmart has been the largest solar panel installer in the world 3 out of the past 4 years. They found ways to eliminate 77% of their operational waste, which means our landfills are getting less filled. And by 2025, they want to have zero waste going to landfills in their 4 most important markets, which are, I think, Canada, the US, the UK, and somewhere else. They conserved 1 million acres in the US, along with the National Fish and Wildlife Fund, in a program they call Acres for America. They've worked with 7 major apparel suppliers to source organic cotton and sustainable cotton crops in the United States. They're working with Google to end deforestation caused by the beef supply chain by 2020. They've removed 96% by weight of chemicals that may be dangerous, not only in their own branded products, but by getting the people they buy from to also eliminate these chemicals. They've trained over 1 million farmers, half of them women, from 2011 through 2016 in sustainable agricultural practices. And finally, at least for this list, Walmart told the industry, the light bulb industry, 7 or 8 years ago, that it was no longer going to sell incandescent light bulbs. Walmart, more than anybody, ended the Thomas Edison era of light bulbs, and now they gave the manufacturers, GE, Philips, and others, 3 years to convert their entire supply chain to compact fluorescents. So the company has a lot of detail on this, and this list doesn't cover all their active programs. But Walmart, all the active programs that Walmart has going to generate energy, save energy, and care for our planet. So for those of you who picked the 400-acre organic farm as having a more beneficial effect on our environment, have any of you changed your mind by what I just told you? Can I see any changes? A couple, 3 or 4. So I'm inclined along the lines of picking Walmart versus the farm. My thinking is informed by a good friend who's on the board of Environmental Defense Fund. Her mission statement reads, "Guided by science and economics, we tackle urgent threats with practical solutions." And I know that EDF's biggest success comes from working with big corporations like Walmart, McDonald's, UPS, and FedEx. And without thinking much more about it, I could make an argument that those of you who stuck with the 500-acre farm are betraying some of the Daniels principles, in particular, integrity. I just proved to you how positive an impact Walmart had on the environment on a hugely large scale. Walmart moved 76 million acres to sustainable farming practices. The organic farm is only 500 acres. Transparency. You organic farm favorers must not have all your cards on the table. You're making me a little suspicious. Maybe even fairness. You must really have it in for the Walmart to choose the organic farm. But for me, to question your adherence to the Daniels principles wouldn't be the right thing to do at all. I would be worse than wrong for questioning your principles. You and I could reach a genuinely different answer on Walmart and the organic farm while both genuinely aligned to all the Daniels principles. Let me switch subjects for a few minutes. Jonathan Haidt is a moral psychologist at NYU Stern School of Business. He went to Yale, he did graduate work at UPenn, he became a tenured professor early in his career at UVA before moving to New York. He's a renowned researcher and author and wrote The Righteous Mind, Why Good People Are Divided by Politics and Religion. He could have added, we're also divided by climate change, land use policy, fly fishing for trout, mountain biking and wilderness, and about 100 other things. He makes the point that our intuition comes first and our strategic reasoning comes second. We, you and I, almost always make snap judgments about what is right and what is wrong. And only then do we deploy our strategic reasoning to defend a position that we have reached almost unconsciously. Here's the central metaphor of Haidt's work. The mind is divided like a rider on an elephant, and the rider's job is to serve the elephant. The reason Haidt picked a rider on an elephant instead of a rider on a horse is that when riding a horse, we can most often control it. But we can't control our elephant. Our elephant is going where it goes. It's too big and powerful to be controlled. In Haidt's decades of research on moral psychology, he found people make moral judgments quickly and emotionally. Moral reasoning was mostly just a post hoc search for reasons to justify the judgments we had already made. We are selfish hypocrites, so skilled at putting on a show of virtue that we fool even ourselves. This phenomenon has been described in religious texts, both Eastern and Western, for thousands of years, from the Gospel of Matthew. Or how can you say to your brother, "Let me take the speck out of your eye," when there is a log in your own eye? You hypocrite. First take the log out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to take the speck out of your brother's eye. The ethics principles are great and important, and I'm fully in support, but I'll make an argument here that's what's missing and also critically important is an overlay and admonition along the lines of make an effort to do your homework before reaching conclusions. I'll give you an example. In my portfolio here in the Valley is responsibility for tourism, as Jeff mentioned. Tourism and Western are the twin pillars of our local economy. In the summer months particularly, we have seen healthy growth, and some of our neighbors in the Valley say our growth is a little too healthy. A 20-something in the Valley wrote to me late last fall to complain that our tourism efforts were so successful that we were ruining our local ecology. I wrote back to him that my family and I moved here in 1984, and that by almost any measure, the natural environment here is better off than it was then. Let me give you some examples. In 1985, people were still burning coal and wood for heat. Our air quality was below standards in the winter. Now we're not burning coal, we are burning wood, but our wood stoves and fireplaces are much more energy efficient than they used to be, and our air quality is much higher. In 1985 here, there were still residual heavy metals flowing into our watershed from old mines and our mining heritage. The mines and our water have been cleaned up for the most part. With cleaner water, insect life recovered in our rivers and streams, and our trout population got stronger. In addition, almost no one kills their trout for dinner anymore, even though it's legal. I was fishing 6 or 7 years ago, and I saw someone with a creel, and I was stunned. I wasn't angry, I was stunned because I hadn't seen a fisherman with a creel in 10 or 15 years. While our more popular trails, mountain biking, hiking, running, get used more than they used to, our older trails have been redesigned, and all the new trails that are built to modern standards that result in far less erosion than we used to have in our trail networks. And finally, our bear, mountain lion, and fox populations have boomed. Recently, there have been reported wolverine sightings. I asked a friend at the Forest Service if that were possible. The answer was yes. We now have wolverines in the valley. In summary, our air and water are cleaner, our erosion less, and our wildlife and fish populations have grown. If I had asked this young guy if he was acting from a place of integrity, trust, accountability, transparency, fairness, respect, rule of law, and viability, as defined by the principles, I'm sure he would have said, yes, he was. Nonetheless, he was making assertions that were undeniably wrong by measurable, objective standards. I wrote him back and included these empirical observations. What exactly did he mean when he claimed our environment was going to hell in a handbasket? I never heard back from him, although my response was respectful and took significantly more time and thought than his initial email to me. His elephant remains firmly in charge. Outdoor ethics. There are some easy calls and there are some tougher ones. Building fires in the forest when there's a fire ban, not too difficult a judgment. Fly fishing for trout when the water is too warm and the fish are stressed. Hunting out of season, riding mountain bikes in designated wilderness areas, trespassing on private lands, allowing dogs to terrorize game. We riders and our elephants ought to be pretty agreeable on these. But what about some tougher calls? Matchstick Productions is a ski film company in Crested Butte. They fly helicopters in the mountains all over the world to get great ski footage. People love their films. Is it ethical for Matchstick to burn so much gas to promote skiing when snowpacks around the globe are being threatened by warming temperatures? E-mountain bikes cause no more damage to trails than regular mountain bikes. Some passionate mountain bikers, as they age, I should say as we age, just can't ride their favorite trails any longer. Is it ethical for an aging mountain biker to ride his e-bike on a trail closed to motors, although the damage is no different than what would be caused by a regular bike? We're seeing an explosion of razors and other off-road vehicles in the Gunnison forest. These vehicles make a lot of noise. Is it ethical for people to shut down these activities just because they don't like the noise? We're surrounded here by 5 wilderness areas where no motorized use is allowed, summer or winter. We also have many restrictions on snowmobiles in many of our Forest Service administered watersheds. There are many more places you can't go on a snowmobile than places you can. Is it ethical for a group called Silent Tracks to lobby to have one of the few watersheds available to snowmobiles shut down? Our public lands are at great risk of burning. Is it ethical for the environmental community to delay and stop our public lands managers from cutting fire breaks? In these last examples, I think it's possible for people of goodwill and good ethics to be on either side of these issues. Let me tell you another story about Walmart. The company has made Bentonville, Arkansas into a mountain bike mecca, building hundreds of miles of trails in the area over the past 5 years. Walmart is keen on the outdoor industry, and in particular the mountain part of the outdoor industry. So it began seeking out suppliers for ski gear, mountain bike gear, and so on. Outdoor industry suppliers banded together and refused to sell to Walmart. Walmart is a big bad discounter, and that doesn't fit the supplier's idea of the outdoor ethic. Why selling high quality tents, sleeping bags, and ski clothing at a discount is that is a bad thing escapes me. Walmart would bring more people into the outdoors, which I see as an inherently good thing if for no other reason than the physical and mental health benefits that accrue to outdoor people. But as usual, the elephant is in charge. Frustrated, Walmart bought Moose Jaw Outdoors, a chain of outdoor and mountaineering stores, mostly in Michigan and with a strong and growing internet sales presence. What was the response from some outdoor good manufacturers? Some, like Patagonia, pulled their lines from Moose Jaw because it was now owned by Walmart. And Walmart is a company that shares most, if not all, of Patagonia's focus on repairing damage and preventing more damage to our planet. As you go forward, please consider that as you hold beliefs and opinions that embrace the Daniels principles, there are others who would hold opposing beliefs who also embrace the Daniels principles. Remember that we are all riders on our all-powerful elephants. It's a humbling metaphor, and not one of us here more than I likes to think of myself as a selfish hypocrite so skilled at putting on a show that I fool even myself. But I know I do. And for that reason, I'm trying to purposely skip a beat before my elephant runs away with an answer that may not be right. Thank you. Roy?
Anybody have any questions? Questions and answers?
Sorry?
Yeah, I'm sure we do.
Thank you, John, for that talk. I'm almost afraid to ask the question because I'm sure my elephant's in charge. I mean, is there a point at which growth is too much?
I'm sure there is. I don't think we've reached that state yet. And if we're talking about population growth, there's a Swedish researcher, I'm trying to think of his name, that made the comment that our global population growth will end somewhere around 2040 or 2050. And his name is Gosling or something like that. And he's recently passed, but he did a tremendous piece of research that he put into this book, and he said that as he broke, instead of the first world, second world, third world, he had 4 different economic buckets that he put people in, and one illustration he used was to help separate people economically throughout the globe was how you cooked. So most of us here probably cook. We probably have an oven and a 4-burner cooktop, and then the second world has, I think, the a portable burners on their stove, and then the third would be a single burner Prius, and then the lowest economic category would be a fire. You're cooking your food over a fire. You're staying warm because of a fire. And he said that people are, the 2s are becoming 1s, and the 3s are becoming 2s, and the 4s are becoming 3s. And as soon as the 4s become 3s, the birth rate is going to decline dramatically, because at that level, people recognize their children as an expense rather than an economic asset that's needed to help them live. And so he said at 2040 or 2050, that will be the end of population growth, because most of Africa and Asia that is in what we would describe poverty now will have escaped it. And then, if we're talking about growth, let's just say on our trail system, Rosling is his name, I think. So if we're talking about trail, let's say on our trail networks in the valley, we build better trails now than we used to. When it rains, the erosion is not what it used to be. Modern trail building techniques would include inclines and declines that are not quite as steep as used to be built back in the day. And so the trail usage is less damaging, and trail construction. And then to growth, it is, we've proven it here that it's possible to have a population growth. We've grown not dramatically from the population in the Gunnison Valley. Tourism has grown. But, I was truly shocked to find that we have wolverines. I mean, I guess not many people have seen them. I've never seen one. But our cat population and our bear, that would be cat meaning mountain lion, our bear population are growing. Deer and elk have always been abundant here. I know the trout fishing is better than it was in the 80s and 90s. And so it can feel like there are too many people often, and then we look at our natural environment, which truly is here significantly better than it was 30 years ago. And I say there is probably a level of growth that is too much, but at least here, I don't think we're near it. Yes?
It was right there. Thanks, John. It's Hans Rosling, just as an FYI. So
Gotcha.
Good job. So here's the paradigm. Ski resorts continue to promote, come on up, they give us the passes, they do all sorts of wonderful things to get us up into the mountains. Yet, fortunately, I don't have to drive up I-70. For everybody, for the most part, has agreed global warming is a big issue. Yet, we have 3 to 5 hours worth of traffic going up to the, call it Summit County area generally, creating more and more pollution, effectively destroying the very asset that everybody's going up to see or enjoy. How do you undo that?
Well, Steve, I think that's one reason people ought to get off I-70 and come to Crested Butte. But we're just full of all these contradictions. And I don't know how you can resolve it. I mean, there's no one who loves winter more than I do. I just love it. You'll hear people in the mountains say, well, I came for the winter, but I stayed for the summer. I came for the winter, and I stay for the winter. And I drive a car. I get on airplanes. I'm a sinner. And I don't know, I don't know what to do about that I-70 issue. I do believe, and I can't believe it's insolvable. We built those tunnels, what, 50 years ago, 40 years ago? And we can't make them bigger and move people more rapidly or find some mass transportation solution to the problem. But I am a huge, as is Rosalind, obviously, believer in human ingenuity and the power of our collective brains and individual brains to solve these vexing problems over time. I was obviously very happy to see this snowy winter we've got now. NOAA, so that's the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric, I don't know what the last A stands for, but they reported this winter, and they consider winter December through February, was the wettest on record across the United States. And that includes rain and snow. So that's a good thing. I believe we can solve most of our problems. Yes?
So I really appreciated your remarks about people having the same values and a different perspective. And I think that's huge. I think it speaks to our need and kind of our purpose for this meeting is to learn how to perspective take and how to hear somebody else's perspective on the same situation. With that being said, I'm an organic farmer. And I just have to ask, is it fair to compare Walmart, which is one of the biggest organizations in the world, with that organic farmer in terms of looking at the footprint that it leaves? One of the things I do know about Walmart is I'm from the San Luis Valley, and I've watched it devastate our community in terms of the social implications. And so I just feel like it does a great job as far as economic or ecological concerns, but I've watched a lot of damage come from Walmart. And I do notice that here in Gunnison, you don't have super Walmarts. And so, again, I think it's important that all voices come to the table. So I'd like to hear how you balance that between the organic farmer and super Walmart.
Well, the point of using the organic farm as a foil for Walmart was to get an immediate response from probably everybody in the room about the choice they would make and how those who chose the organic farm would hang in there confronted with all the facts and figures I threw at you for 10 minutes about the Walmart goodness. I don't think Walmart is all good, nor do I think any of us are all good, nor do I think any company is all good. And so that wasn't the point, but the point was to, and it could be an exaggerated example, is to make us think about Haidt's conclusions, and it's not H-A-T-E hate, it's H-A-I-D-T hate, and the book is The Righteous Mind, about how we leap to the answer and then backfill all our rationale after that. And I'm not saying you do it and I don't. I may do it worse than anybody here in the room. And I meant what I said when I ended with, I am really trying to make myself skip a beat when someone asks a question or I draw some conclusion. Because I think Haidt's right, and our elephant just goes to the answer, and then our brain tries to catch up. And I think, generally speaking, that's probably not a good thing, but it happens. And so how do we prevent that from happening? How do we really dig into the issues? Why didn't the kid that said that everything was so bad here now, ecologically, even answer me and just say, wow, that was an eye-opener. I still think we have too many tourists, but those are some really good points you raised about the increasing quality of our natural environment versus its rapid decline. I think the principles in association with a lot of homework, and I don't think the homework is necessarily fun, because I think we'll reach conclusions sometimes we don't want to. But I think that's a very, if we could combine those Daniels ethical principles and that homework, our world would be better off. Sir?
Actually, if I could add a statement from my own experience, this might be hopeful. I worked at an engineering school for about 5 or 6 years, and the young people in the engineering programs were some of the most wonderful people you ever want to meet. Can you hear me back there? Save a little bit of electricity.
Use the mic.
Okay, I'll use the mic. Makes me feel like I'm supposed to be a rock star or something. Anyway, the young people in those engineering programs were dedicated to being outdoors. They absolutely loved it. And I helped them to start small companies and do entrepreneurial activities. And almost to a person, their primary goal was to create stuff that created less harm to the environment. Personally, these younger people, which are getting older, they're going to kick so much ass that they're going to cut pollution emissions down by 90+%. I'm personally very confident, so hopefully that provides a touch of hope.
I believe that. I share your enthusiasm. And Steve, thanks for reminding me about Hans Rosling. I'm still, the name of the book is escaping me, but if you Google him, you'll find a tremendously research-based but optimistic look at our future. And you know, some of us like that. I think, you know, my elephant is an optimistic elephant to begin with. And I know people whose elephants are naturally pessimistic, and I'm not sure we can change that. But we can do that homework. And Rosling did a real service. He was a medical doctor who served in Africa for much of his career. And he did good things and he did bad things. Bad things inadvertently. I think he was a good, well-intentioned person. But I've got to agree with my colleague here that things can be getting better, not worse, except for I-70.
That's the way it does. I think you're probably
So you kind of hinted at this a little bit, but I wanted to kind of hear you expound upon it. You know, in retail, there's always a drive, and price is always kind of critical when you consider different price points and those type of things. But when it comes to waste, it's sometimes that cheaper price item, whether it be a tent or a backpack or something like that, might not last 1 or 2 trips, but it's enough to get someone outdoors for an inexpensive price, yet all that waste kind of went into that product. And then when you also look at, in terms of an outdoor industry that's really concerned about climate change and stuff like that, they're also concerned about price, and so they reach out to China and other countries who have, you know, dismal records in terms of pollution and so forth. And manufacturing close to home all of a sudden becomes more thought-provoking, but yet there's the price issue. And so there's this war that's kind of happening between, you know, delivering a product at a reasonable price that people can afford, but yet having a product that is, you know, sustainable and a better quality that can be reused and last longer. It seems to be a real big ethical issue right there of how to kind of drive that.
Yeah, you know, I'll go back to Walmart on this one and comment that, you know, they've tried to do all these good things, but they can't upset their business model either. I think it's, so I've been a Patagonia purchaser for years, going way back. And, I'll actually spend a little bit more. I think my girls' wife, 3 daughters, and my wife will, because we like what the company stands for, and we appreciate some of the bold stances they've taken as it comes to our planet and our planetary health. I'm not sure that same calculus would go on in my mind when I walk into a Walmart. I said, I will spend a little more at Walmart because they're doing all these good things. I think they're stuck with needing to be a low price leader. And I appreciate also that environmentally that cheap tent might be really more expensive than the expensive one. But if you love the outdoors, I guess I'd say you're talking to a guy who went on his honeymoon up in Maine, northern Maine, and my bride and I, 41 years later, we're still married, we're in a JCPenney tent that was either super hot because it didn't breathe or leaked when it rained. It did a decent job of keeping the no-see-ums out, but not an excellent job. Anyway, if we didn't have that, we wouldn't have had anything. And we wouldn't have been in the outdoors because we were right out of school, newlyweds, we didn't have any money. And everything's tricky. Everything is tricky. They love you.
Feel like a rock star. John, you maybe addressed this at the end of your remarks. If so, would you clarify? Had your 20-year-old email correspondent here in the Valley made that same assertion about us as a country as a whole, about environmental degradation and the trends that we're on, how would you have responded to that?
I'd actually have to look it up. Everything I read, we're farming better than we used to be. We've got more land protected from development than we ever have. I grew up in Pittsburgh, in downtown Pittsburgh. I'm a Steelers fan. And for whatever reason, I loved what happened to our 3 Bs. 2 of them are gone. Anyway, I loved to fish, and I would fish down in the Monongahela and Allegheny, right at the point of Pittsburgh, where those rivers were as polluted as, the river caught fire. I guess maybe less polluted than the Cuyahoga in Cleveland because our rivers didn't catch fire. But, I brought home some catfish once to my mother. She said, never bring those fish. We're not going to eat those fish. Are you serious? And I know the rivers now in Pittsburgh, I caught a bass once right off the point, and we didn't know what it was. It was in the Allegheny. It's like, what is this fish? Because it'd only be catfish and carp. I still loved it. But those rivers are cleaner. I would guess that we made, this is a guess, I'd have to look it up, but probably sometime in the 1970s was the nadir of environmental quality of our air, land, and water resources, and that we've been getting better since.
Thank you.
Pittsburgh was the city where you turn the streetlights were on 24 hours a day, and you always drove with your headlamps on. I mean, that was the way it was. You look at the Warrior pictures, it's unbelievable. You can't tell if it's midnight or 9 o'clock in the morning. It never got light. And that's not the case anymore. Hey, thank you.